A billionaire family mocked the black CEO's daughter. Seconds later, their $750 million deal collapsed. The crystal chandeliers at the Grandview Hotel cast dancing shadows across the marble floor as Maya Thompson stood at the entrance of the ballroom, holding her invitation with steady hands despite the trembling she felt inside. She had chosen her outfit carefully for tonight's charity gala, a simple but elegant navy blue dress she had bought from a department store sale, paired with her grandmother's pearl necklace that meant more to her than any diamond ever could. The invitation in her hand represented something much bigger than just entry to an exclusive event. It was proof that her father's technology company, Thomson Digital Solutions, had finally made it to the top tier of American business, earning them a seat at the most prestigious charity event of the year in Chicago. Maya was 24 years old, fresh out of business school, and tonight was supposed to be her introduction to the elite business world where million-dollar deals were discussed over champagne and small talk. Her father, Jerome Thompson, had built his company from nothing, starting in their garage when Maya was just 5 years old. She remembered nights when he would work until dawn, teaching himself coding while her mother brought him coffee and sandwiches. Now, 19 years later, Thomson Digital Solutions was worth over $15 billion, though most people in these circles had no idea who Jerome Thompson was because he preferred to stay out of the spotlight, letting his work speak for itself. Maya had begged him to let her attend tonight's event alone, wanting to prove she could handle herself in this world without her father's protective shadow. As she approached the registration desk, Maya noticed how different she looked from the other guests who swept past her in designer gowns and custom-tailored suits that probably cost more than most people's cars. The registration area was managed by 3 women who looked like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine, their blonde hair perfectly styled, their makeup flawless, their smiles practiced and cold. Behind them stood the Sterling family, the hosts of tonight's event and owners of Sterling International, a massive conglomerate that controlled everything from real estate to pharmaceutical companies. Margaret Sterling, the matriarch of the family, stood like a queen surveying her kingdom, her silver hair pulled into an elegant bun, her black Chanel dress adorned with diamonds that caught the light with every movement. Her husband, William Sterling, looked every inch the billionaire businessman in his Italian suit, his gray eyes scanning the room like a hawk watching for prey. Their children flanked them like royal guards. Alexander Sterling, 32 years old and heir to the empire, had the kind of confidence that came from never having to work for anything in his life. His younger sister, Isabella, 28 and a social media influencer with 3 million followers, was already filming the event on her phone, narrating to her audience about the exclusive gathering of America's elite, while making sure her designer dress was perfectly positioned in frame. The youngest Sterling, 25-year-old Christopher, stood slightly apart from his family, looking bored as he scrolled through his phone, occasionally showing something to his girlfriend, a model named Scarlett who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. Maya reached the registration desk and smiled warmly at the woman behind it, whose name tag read Jennifer. She placed her invitation on the marble counter and said politely, "Good evening. I'm Maya Thompson, representing the Thompson Foundation. We have a table reserved for tonight." Jennifer's eyes swept over Maya from head to toe, taking in her simple dress, her modest jewelry, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo that had taken her 2 hours to perfect but probably looked nothing like the elaborate styles around her. Something shifted in Jennifer's expression, a subtle hardening that Maya had seen too many times before in her life. Jennifer picked up the invitation between 2 fingers like it might be contaminated and examined it with exaggerated scrutiny. "Thompson Foundation?" Jennifer said loudly, her voice carrying across the registration area and causing several heads to turn. "I don't recall seeing that name on our guest list. Are you sure you have the right event?" Before Maya could respond, Isabella Sterling had noticed the commotion and drifted over, her phone still recording. "What's happening here?" she asked, her voice sweet but her eyes sharp with the anticipation of drama. Jennifer turned to Isabella with a conspiratorial look. "This young woman claims to have an invitation, but I'm not finding her name on our system." Isabella's gaze landed on Maya, and her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose in surprise. "Oh my," she said, loud enough for her phone's microphone to catch every word. someone's trying to crash our charity gala. This is actually happening right now, you guys, she said to her online audience. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks but kept her voice calm and professional. There's no mistake. The Thompson Foundation donated $100,000 to tonight's cause. Our invitation was confirmed weeks ago. She pulled out her phone to show the confirmation email, but Margaret Sterling had already approached, drawn by her daughter's excited voice. The older woman's eyes were like ice as they examined Maya, taking in every detail with the kind of judgment that could freeze blood. "Young lady," Margaret said, her voice dripping with false concern, "I personally oversee every invitation to our events. I know every family, every foundation, every person of significance in this city. I've never heard of any Thompson Foundation." The crowd around them was growing now, other guests pausing on their way into the ballroom to watch the unfolding scene. Maya could hear whispers starting to spread like wildfire through the gathered elite. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "Look at that dress, it's from Target," another voice said with barely concealed laughter. "Someone call security before this gets embarrassing," a third person suggested. Alexander Sterling had joined his mother and sister now, his tall frame towering over Maya as he crossed his arms and looked down at her with undisguised disdain. "Mother, allow me to handle this," he said with the kind of authority that came from years of getting his way. He turned to Maya, speaking slowly as if she might not understand him. "Listen, miss, I don't know what you're trying to achieve here, but this is a private event for established families and legitimate foundations. Whatever game you're playing, it ends now." Maya stood her ground, her grandmother's voice echoing in her mind, telling her to never let anyone make her feel small. "Mr. Sterling, I assure you there's no game. The Thompson Foundation's donation has already been processed. We're sponsors of tonight's Children's Hospital Wing dedication." Christopher Sterling had stopped scrolling through his phone and was now filming alongside his sister, adding his own commentary. "This is insane, guys. Someone actually thought they could just walk into our event. The audacity is almost admirable." His girlfriend Scarlett giggled beside him, whispering something about people not knowing their place, that made several nearby guests laugh. William Sterling finally stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. He looked at Maya with the kind of calculating gaze that had crushed countless business opponents. "Young woman, I'm going to give you one opportunity to leave with dignity. Turn around, walk out those doors, and we'll pretend this never happened. Otherwise, I'll have security escort you out, and I assure you, that will be far less pleasant." The threat in his voice was clear, and the crowd around them seemed to hold its breath, phones raised to capture whatever happened next. Maya could see the security guards starting to move closer, their hands on their radios, ready to act on William's command. Isabella's live stream was exploding with comments, the viewer count climbing past 50,000 as word spread across social media that drama was unfolding at the Sterling Charity Gala. "Oh my God, you guys, she's still not leaving," Isabella narrated breathlessly. "Security is moving in. This is about to get real." She zoomed in on Maya's face, catching the moment when Maya's phone began to ring. The name on the screen was clearly visible to those standing close enough, Dad, Jerome Thompson. Maya looked at the phone, then at the Sterling family surrounding her like vultures, and made a decision that would change everything. She answered the call, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice steady despite the circus around her. "I'm at the Sterling Charity Gala, but there seems to be some confusion about our invitation." The voice that came through the speaker was deep, calm, but with an underlying steel that made several people step back instinctively. "Maya, are you safe? I'm watching Isabella Sterling's live stream right now. I can see what they're doing to you." The Sterling family exchanged glances, suddenly uncertain. How did this man know Isabella's name? How was he watching the live stream? Who exactly was Jerome Thompson? "I'm fine, Dad," Maya replied, looking directly at Margaret Sterling. "The Sterling family just doesn't seem to recognize the Thompson Foundation, despite our $100,000 Donation and our confirmed invitation. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Jerome spoke again, his voice had changed, becoming harder, more businesslike. Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Sterling, I know you can hear me. This is Jerome Thompson, CEO of Thompson Digital Solutions. You might want to check your phones right about now. As if on cue, William Sterling's phone began buzzing frantically. He pulled it out, his face paling as he read the screen. Alexander's phone was next, then Margaret's. Within seconds, every Sterling family member was staring at their devices with expressions of growing horror. The crowd watched in confusion as the confident, arrogant family that had been tormenting Maya suddenly looked like they had seen a ghost. William Sterling's hand shook as he answered his phone. Marcus? Marcus Whitfield? Yes, I'm at the gala. What do you mean the deal is off? Marcus Whitfield was Sterling International's biggest potential partner, a venture capitalist who had agreed to invest $750 million in Sterling's new pharmaceutical division. The deal was supposed to save Sterling International from the financial crisis they had been desperately hiding from the public, the crisis that would destroy them if it became known. On the speaker, Jerome Thompson's voice continued, calm and measured. Mr. Sterling, did you know that Marcus Whitfield is one of my closest friends? We've been business partners for 15 years. He's also on the board of Thompson Digital Solutions. The blood drained from William's face as the implications hit him like a physical blow. Jerome's voice filled the silent space around them. 15 minutes ago, I sent Marcus and several other mutual business partners the live stream of how your family has been treating my daughter. Every moment of mockery, every insult, every threat to have her removed by security. It's all been broadcast to thousands of viewers and recorded for posterity. Isabella's phone shook in her hand as she realized her own live stream had become evidence of her family's downfall. The viewer count had passed 100,000, and the comments section was exploding with outrage as people realized what they were witnessing. The Thompson Foundation, Jerome continued, has donated over $50 million to various charities in the past 5 years. Thompson Digital Solutions, the company you've apparently never heard of, provides the cloud infrastructure for 60% of Fortune 500 companies, including, ironically, Sterling International. You've been paying us $12 million a year for our services. The crowd gasped collectively as the truth began to sink in. The Sterling family hadn't just insulted some random gate crasher. They had publicly humiliated the daughter of one of the most powerful tech CEOs in the country, a man whose company could destroy them with a single decision. Margaret Sterling's carefully composed face crumbled as her phone rang with her own devastating call. It was the board of directors of Sterling International, and she could hear the panic in the chairman's voice before she even answered. Margaret, what have you done? Jerome Thompson just called an emergency meeting of his board. He's terminating all contracts with Sterling International, effective immediately. That's not just the $12 million in cloud services. He's pulling Thompson Digital from the data center project. That's another $300 million gone. The stock market opens in 12 hours, and when this news breaks, we're finished. Alexander Sterling tried to salvage something from the wreckage, stepping toward Maya with his hands raised in a gesture of peace. Miss Thompson, Maya, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We had no idea who you were. If we had known your father was Jerome Thompson, we would never have. Maya's voice cut through his fumbling apology like a blade. You would never have what, Mr. Sterling? Never have judged me by my appearance. Never have assumed I didn't belong because of the color of my skin and the price of my dress. Never have tried to humiliate me for your family's entertainment. Her words rang out clear and strong, captured by dozens of phones and Isabella's still running live stream. The security guards who had been moving to remove Maya now stood frozen, unsure what to do as the power dynamics in the room completely reversed. Some of the crowd began to distance themselves from the Sterling family, not wanting to be associated with what was quickly becoming the social catastrophe of the decade. Others continued recording, knowing they were witnessing a moment that would be talked about for years to come. Jennifer, the receptionist who had started this whole incident, tried to slip away quietly, but Maya's voice stopped her. "Jennifer, where are you going? Don't you want to finish checking my invitation? I'm sure you'll find the Thompson Foundation right there on your list, exactly where it's been all along." Christopher Sterling's girlfriend, Scarlett, had gone pale as she recognized the implications for her own social media career. Being associated with this incident would destroy her carefully cultivated image. She stepped away from Christopher, her phone already busy as she tried to distance herself from the unfolding disaster. Christopher himself stood frozen, his usual smirk replaced by the expression of someone watching their entire world collapse in real time. His phone showed his social media followers dropping by the thousands as people unfollowed him in disgust. Jerome Thompson's voice returned to the speaker, addressing not just the Sterling family but everyone listening. "Ladies and gentlemen attending tonight's gala, I want you all to understand something. My daughter Maya graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Business School. She speaks 4 languages, has published papers on economic inequality, and volunteers every weekend at homeless shelters. She earned her place at this event through merit, through compassion, through dedication to helping others. But your hosts, the Sterling family, saw none of that. They saw only her skin color and made assumptions that revealed exactly who they really are beneath their designer clothes and practiced smiles." William Sterling's phone rang again, and this time his face went from pale to gray. "What do you mean the pharmaceutical division is under investigation? The FDA received what documents?" On the speaker, Jerome's voice remained calm. "Oh, did I mention that my company also handles data security for several government agencies? It's amazing what irregularities can be found when someone takes a closer look at pharmaceutical trial data. Of course, I'm sure Sterling International has nothing to hide, but these investigations can be quite thorough, quite public, and quite devastating to stock prices." The complete destruction of the Sterling family's empire was happening in real time, broadcast to hundreds of thousands of viewers worldwide. Isabella's live stream had been picked up by major news outlets, and reporters were already gathering outside the hotel, eager to cover what was being called the gala catastrophe on social media. Margaret Sterling made one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. "Mr. Thompson, surely we can discuss this privately. This is all a misunderstanding that's gotten out of hand. Your daughter is welcome here, of course she is. We simply didn't recognize her name, that's all." Maya's voice was strong and clear as she responded. "Mrs. Sterling, you didn't need to recognize my name. You needed to treat me with basic human dignity, something you would have done if I had walked in here with white skin and a designer dress. But you didn't, and now everyone has seen who you really are." She looked around at the crowd, many of whom couldn't meet her eyes, knowing they had been complicit in their silence. "How many of you stood there and watched? How many of you whispered and laughed and filmed while this family tried to destroy my dignity? You're all part of this, every single one of you who stood by and did nothing." Dr. Patricia Winters, a prominent surgeon who had been watching from the edge of the crowd, stepped forward. "She's right. I stood here and watched, and I'm ashamed. Miss Thompson, I apologize for my silence. It was cowardice, plain and simple." Her admission broke something in the crowd, and suddenly others were speaking up, some offering apologies, others trying to justify their inaction, the room filling with voices as the careful social order of the elite crumbled into chaos. Through it all, Jerome Thompson's voice continued from the speaker. "Maya, I'm 5 minutes away. My lawyers are with me, along with several board members who want to meet the young woman who stood up to the Sterling family with such grace and dignity. We have some documents to serve, some contracts to terminate, and some partnerships to end. But first, I think we should make sure that donation to the Children's Hospital is properly recognized. After all, that's what tonight was supposed to be about, helping sick children, not stroking the egos of billionaire bullies." Alexander Sterling made one final attempt to speak, his voice cracking with desperation. "Mr. Thompson, please, thousands of jobs depend on our partnership. Our employees, their families, they don't deserve to suffer for our mistake. There was a pause before Jerome responded. You're right, Mr. Sterling. They don't deserve to suffer for your mistake. That's why Thompson Digital Solutions will be offering positions to any Sterling International employee who wants to work for a company that values diversity, integrity, and basic human decency. We'll be setting up a recruitment office tomorrow morning. I suspect we'll be quite busy. The final blow came when William Sterling's phone rang with a call from the board of directors. Even from a distance, people could hear the shouting on the other end. You're fired, William. Effective immediately. The entire family is removed from all positions within Sterling International. Security is already at your offices, changing the locks. Your company credit cards have been frozen. The board will be pursuing legal action to recover damages from this catastrophe. William's legs seemed to give out, and he had to grab a chair to keep from falling. Margaret's face had gone from pale to a sickly green color as the reality of their complete destruction sank in. Isabella's live stream captured the moment when the Sterling family empire officially died. Her phone showed the comments flooding in, but they were no longer the supportive messages she was used to receiving. You got what you deserved. Racism has consequences. Best live stream ever, watching billionaire bullies get destroyed. Maya Thompson is my hero. The Sterling family is cancelled forever. Her follower count was hemorrhaging, dropping from 3 million to 2 million to 1 million as people unfollowed en masse, not wanting to be associated with what she had become the face of. Christopher Sterling stood frozen as his girlfriend Scarlett publicly broke up with him via her own Instagram story, telling her followers she couldn't be associated with racist behavior, and that she had no idea the Sterling family held such prejudiced views. The humiliation was complete and total, every aspect of their lives unraveling in full view of the public they had tried so hard to impress. The Sterling name, which had opened every door in high society for generations, had become toxic in a matter of minutes, all because they couldn't treat a young black woman with basic respect. When Jerome Thompson walked through the doors of the ballroom 5 minutes later, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. He was everything his daughter was, dignified, powerful, commanding respect without demanding it. He walked straight to Maya and embraced her, whispering something in her ear that made her smile for the first time since the ordeal began. Then he turned to face the Sterling family, his expression neither angry nor triumphant, just disappointed. You had everything, he said quietly, his voice carrying in the silent room. Wealth, power, influence, opportunity. You could have used it to lift others up, to make the world better, to actually help those children this gala was supposed to benefit. Instead, you used it to try to tear down a young woman who had done nothing but walk through your door with a legitimate invitation. He pulled out a check from his pocket and handed it to Dr. Patricia Winters, who had stepped forward earlier. Doctor, I understand you're on the board of the Children's Hospital. This is a check for $5 million from the Thompson Foundation. I want it to go specifically to providing care for children whose families can't afford treatment. And I want it announced that this donation is being made in honor of every person who has ever been judged, dismissed, or humiliated because of their appearance, their background, or their bank account. The room erupted in applause, but Jerome raised his hand for silence. I'm not finished, he continued, his voice growing harder. Sterling International will be facing a comprehensive audit of all their business practices. Every contract, every deal, every financial transaction will be scrutinized. The pharmaceutical division will be investigated for the irregularities our data security team has uncovered. And yes, this will all be very public. The Sterling family wanted attention tonight. They wanted to be the center of everyone's focus. Well, congratulations. You're about to be the most famous family in America, but not for the reasons you hoped. Margaret Sterling found her voice one last time, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. You're destroying us over one mistake. One moment of poor judgment. Maya stepped forward then, her voice clear and strong. No, Mrs. Sterling. We're not destroying you. You destroyed yourselves the moment you decided that my worth as a human being was determined by my appearance. This isn't about one mistake. This is about a lifetime of treating people as less than human because they don't look like you, don't dress like you, don't come from your world. Tonight, you just finally did it to the wrong person at the wrong time, and the whole world got to watch. As the Sterling family was escorted from their own gala by security, the same security they had threatened to use against Maya, Isabella's phone continued streaming. The final image her followers saw was the Sterling family walking through the lobby of the Grandview Hotel, their heads down, their empire in ruins, while behind them, Maya Thompson stood tall, surrounded by people who were finally seeing her for who she really was. The live stream ended with a viewer count of over 500,000, and within hours, the video would be viewed by millions around the world. The aftermath came swift and brutal for the Sterling family. By morning, Sterling International's stock had crashed by 80%. Every major partner had pulled out of deals, not wanting to be associated with the toxic brand. The FDA investigation into the pharmaceutical division uncovered significant violations that resulted in criminal charges. William Sterling would eventually serve 3 years in federal prison for fraud. Margaret Sterling, once the queen of high society, became a pariah, uninvited from every social event, her presence considered poisonous to any gathering. Alexander lost his position as heir to an empire that no longer existed, his business reputation destroyed beyond repair. Isabella's influencer career died overnight. Brands cancelled every sponsorship, every partnership, every collaboration. Her attempts to apologize and rehabilitate her image fell on deaf ears. The internet never forgets, and her live stream became a permanent reminder of who she really was beneath the carefully curated image. Christopher struggled to find employment anywhere, his name too toxic for any company to risk hiring him. Scarlett, his ex-girlfriend, wrote a tell-all book about the Sterling family that became a bestseller, exposing even more of their prejudiced behavior and corrupt business practices. But for Maya Thompson, that night became a turning point in a different direction. She became a symbol of dignity in the face of discrimination, of standing tall when others tried to tear you down. She received thousands of messages from people sharing their own stories of facing prejudice and finding strength in her example. Companies competed to offer her positions on their boards, wanting to show they valued diversity and inclusion. She chose carefully, accepting only those positions where she could make real change, where her voice would be heard and her ideas implemented. The Thompson Foundation expanded its reach, funding education programs in underserved communities, providing scholarships for students who might otherwise never have the chance to attend college, supporting small businesses owned by people of color who faced the same kind of discrimination Maya had experienced. Every program, every scholarship, every grant carried the same message: your worth is not determined by others' prejudices, your potential is not limited by others' assumptions, your dignity cannot be taken away by anyone, no matter how powerful they think they are. A year after that fateful night at the gala, Maya stood at a podium in the same ballroom where she had been humiliated, but this time, she was the keynote speaker for the annual Diversity in Business Summit. The room was packed with business leaders, all there to hear from the woman whose grace under fire had changed the conversation about discrimination in corporate America. She looked out at the crowd, many of whom had been present that night when the Sterling family had tried to destroy her, and began her speech with words that would be quoted in business schools for years to come. "A year ago, in this very room, I learned a valuable lesson," she began, her voice strong and clear. "I learned that dignity isn't something that can be given or taken away by others. It's something you carry within yourself, something you choose to maintain regardless of how others treat you. The Sterling family thought they could strip away my dignity with their words, their mockery, their threats. But all they did was reveal their own lack of it. They showed the world that wealth without wisdom is worthless, that power without principles is pathetic, that influence without integrity is meaningless." She paused, looking at the faces in the crowd, seeing understanding dawn in their eyes. "But I also learned something else that night. I learned that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Every person who stood by and watched, who whispered and laughed, who filmed without intervening, they were all part of the problem. And if we want to create real change, if we want to build a business world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed based on their merit rather than their melanin, then we all need to find the courage to speak up, to stand up, to refuse to be silent when we witness discrimination. The speech continued for another 30 minutes, outlining practical steps for creating inclusive workplaces, sharing data on how diversity improved business outcomes, challenging the audience to examine their own biases and prejudices. But it was her closing words that brought the room to its feet in a standing ovation that lasted for 5 full minutes. The Sterling family's empire collapsed in one night because it was built on a foundation of prejudice and privilege rather than principle and purpose. Let their fall be a lesson to all of us. Build your success on treating every person with dignity and respect, and it will stand strong. Build it on discrimination and disdain, and watch it crumble the moment someone has the courage to stand up and say, "No more." The story of that night became legend in business circles, taught in ethics classes as an example of how quickly an empire could fall when built on the wrong values. The phrase, "Sterling moment," entered the business lexicon, referring to any incident where someone's prejudices led to their downfall. Companies implemented Maya protocols, policies designed to prevent discrimination and ensure equal treatment for all. The Thompson-Sterling incident, as historians would later call it, became a watershed moment in corporate America's journey toward genuine inclusion and diversity. Maya Thompson continued to rise in the business world, but she never forgot the lesson of that night. In every boardroom, in every meeting, in every interaction, she carried herself with the same quiet dignity that had sustained her through the attempted humiliation. She became known not just as Jerome Thompson's daughter, but as a formidable business leader in her own right, someone who combined brilliance with compassion, strength with grace, power with purpose. And whenever she told the story of that night at the gala, she always ended with the same message: a billionaire family mocked the black CEO's daughter. Seconds later, their $750 million deal collapsed. But the real collapse wasn't about money. It was about the fall of an outdated system that judged people by their appearance rather than their character. And from those ruins, we built something better, something stronger, something more just. That's the real victory. Years later, when business students studied the Thompson-Sterling incident, they would marvel at how a single night, a single moment of standing up to injustice, could trigger such massive change. They would analyze the financial implications, the social media impact, the legal ramifications. But what they would remember most was the image of Maya Thompson, standing tall in her simple dress and her grandmother's pearls, refusing to let anyone diminish her worth. She had walked into that gala as Jerome Thompson's daughter. She walked out as a symbol of resistance, resilience, and revolution in corporate America. And the Sterling family? They became a cautionary tale, a reminder that in the age of social media and instant accountability, treating people with prejudice and disrespect wasn't just morally wrong, it was corporate suicide. The children's hospital that was supposed to benefit from that night's gala eventually received over $20 million in donations from people inspired by Maya's story. A new wing was built and named the Thompson Unity Center, providing free care to children regardless of their family's ability to pay. At the dedication ceremony, Maya stood with her father, looking at the plague that bore their family name. But she wasn't thinking about the Sterling family or that terrible night. She was thinking about all the children who would receive care, all the lives that would be saved, all the good that had come from standing up to evil. And she smiled, knowing that her grandmother, who had passed away years before but whose strength had sustained her through that ordeal, would have been proud. The story ends where it began, with a young woman walking into a room full of people who thought they were better than her. But Maya Thompson proved that night that true worth isn't measured in designer clothes or bank accounts or family names. It's measured in how you treat others when you think no one important is watching. The Sterling family failed that test spectacularly and paid the ultimate price. Maya passed it with flying colors and changed the world in the process. And that, more than any business deal or social media moment, is the legacy of that night when a billionaire family mocked the black CEO's daughter, and seconds later, their entire world collapsed.